All right, good evening, everyone. It is now 6:05. Welcome everyone to Run 101, our first session. We're so excited that everyone is here tonight. We are going to get started with a quick introduction. My name is Destiny Smith. I'm the Leadership Program Manager at Catalyst Miami, pronoun she, her, and I'm also a part of North Miami. So shout out to those folks that were in the chat that are part of that community. Welcome to my neighbors and friends. And so we're going to get started. As you're joining us and coming in, feel free to continue to put your name, your pronouns, and the part of town that you live in the chat, so that way we can get to know each other. But before we get started into the main content for today, if this is your first time engaging with Catalyst Miami, we just want to welcome you. We want to give you a little intro into who Catalyst Miami is, what it is that we do. And so Catalyst Miami is a nonprofit that works with communities to address immediate needs and build a better future together. And so what does that mean? So for example, we do everything from helping people to get health care insurance through our direct services, to advocating for them to have better healthcare policy like Medicaid expansion in the whole state of Florida. And so we do a lot of different things, whether that is direct services, as I shared, that is leadership programming, something like what you are sitting in today, popular education, or policy and advocacy work. And so we have a both and approach, and that is both reforming the current systems and also ushering in new people powered systems. And so we believe that this approach includes making information about running for office, like what we're doing here today, more accessible so that ordinary people like you yourself, like myself, can take this next step in service of our communities. And so if you have any questions about Catalyst Miami and more about who we are, you can always feel free to drop onto our website at catalystmiami.org, where you can find out a little bit more about us. So we can move on to what is the Catalyst Candidate Institute. And so Run 101, firstly, is what we are a part of tonight. And this is for 2 sessions, both this week and next week. And they're going to be open to anyone in the community, anyone that's interested in learning about what it means to run for office and what does that look like. And the purpose for this is really to get folks thinking about possibly running for office. What does that look like? What does that take? What's the process? Is it scary? Is it not? So just kind of giving some ground rules and background. And then that leads into the Catalyst Candidate Institute. And the Catalyst Candidate Institute is a 5-week training series where all candidates that are now taking this course are able to be connected to a mentor who has run for office previously, successfully in the past. And you'll also have more training series just like this one with more in-depth support, and also office hours with Catalyst staff are made available to you. And so again, both of these are nonpartisan grassroots training programs for prospective candidates and campaign staffers that are rooted in progressive values. And so again, today's session is really just about thinking about running for office, understanding your options, and getting in touch with your why. Why it is that you're even interested in doing something like this. And so if you are interested, after we go through this next 2 sessions, we'll give you tons and tons of information about the Catalyst Candidate Institute moving forward. But as we get started, this is what we are doing today, which is getting in touch with our why and understanding office. So, here we go. Yes, so again, today's purpose of today's sessions: 1, get you started to think about running for office. 2, understanding your options. There's tons of different options. It doesn't mean you have to run for mayor just because you're here. But if you want to, we welcome it. And then at the same time, also getting in touch with your why. Why is it that you want to run for office? So as we think about getting in touch with our why, we're actually going to open up some breakout groups. And so within these breakout groups, we're going to have about 15 minutes to have a conversation around who or what has had the greatest influence on your political awareness and values, and why. Who are those people? What were those experiences? And we're going to be in the breakout rooms for about 15 minutes. So do we have any questions before we open those breakout groups, just to make sure that we have everyone understanding what it is that we're going to get started on? No questions. All right. Well, we're going to get started in our breakout rooms. And so we will meet you all back here in 15 minutes. And I'll be dropping this question in the chat as well, so that way you have it before you get started. And if you need support while you're in the breakout rooms, always feel free to just hit the ask for help button that's on the bottom toolbar as well. All right, see you back here in 15 minutes. Hey, Rose, no worries. So glad that you're here with us. All right, everyone. I believe we are all almost back. We have a couple of folks still joining us. We have about 23 more seconds until they are back with us, but we'll get started in just a second. Yay, I'm glad you liked the question, Charlene. It was a really good question. All right, I think we're all back. All right, so we're gonna get started. So how was that? Any general feedback? Charlene said that she loved the question. There was a great icebreaker and meeting some of the folks in attendance. Thank you for the feedback. Any other thoughts on how that went for folks? And feel free to jump off mute and just share general thoughts and feedback. Yeah, so some folks got to talk about some elected officials that they admire, notice some common themes. If you notice some common themes, Alex, feel free to drop that in the chat or come off mute and just share a little bit about what you all have in common.
I was impressed with the diversity of those who influenced, and in which out of the diversity, the shaping of each one, and we were able to give back to one another. That was great campaigning, by the way, great campaigning.
Love it, love it. Thank you, Loris. Enrique, how about you? You had your hand raised.
Okay, basically our team was basically, we discussed the most influential were family members, that grandmother's family, but we all here to learn basically. And one of the main issues were the civil rights movement, even Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, the people that have shaped the future. And that was civil rights for all people, not just one race, or because it is sometimes misinterpreted that Martin Luther King looked for a fairness. Race was a secondary impact, but it was a fairness for all races, equality. Yeah.
We'll take one other person. I saw Luis, and then Alex. If you want to drop, you have a quick. You all have 30-second clips, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, super quick.
You go, Alex. No worries.
Another, is there another one?
You both can go. No, you both can go. Feel free, Luis, Alex. You both can go.
I was just gonna quickly say it's great to hear what everyone's own motivation for joining this discussion is coming together. I feel like anyone that's on this call has the best of intentions of doing right by the people that represent and are part of their communities. And, I don't feel that's true for a lot of candidates that just throw their hat in the ring for various interests, but here we're gathered to learn and to exercise our right to consider options for ourselves for the future. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here and for you guys for hosting this.
Awesome, thank you. Luis?
Yeah, just really quick. A common theme in in our group was a lot of people were spurred by marches. So that was for more political action rather than figures. And that's what we saw in our
I
group. So that
love
was really
that.
awesome.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we got some of that where there was a Black Panther Party inspired someone to combat injustice. And so there's a lot of really great reasons as to why we are joining into this fight. So cool. Well, before we get started into the main content portion, this would not be Catalyst if we did not talk about our community agreements. We are sharing space together and we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable, everyone is able to be heard, and that we all can agree and share this space together. So we have a list of a few community agreements that we could think of, but there may be some other things. And so we're going to take a couple of minutes to just kind of share what is it that you need in order to show up in this space and to be your authentic self, to learn, as folks have shared, to express your rights as citizens, as other folks have shared, and to live out this vision that you have for yourselves in terms of your political engagement. And so what is it that you need to show up in this space? We have step up, step back, which means just really being mindful of space, so, sometimes you may need to step up and share your experience, share your voice. And sometimes maybe you need to step back and let others share and participate. Be present, let's build together. This one is really important because for me and for us, as we're in this virtual space, we're in boxes. And so we do not judge camera behavior. So please, if you can, come on camera. If you are willing and able, come on camera. If you're cooking in the back, no problem. You are present here with us and that's what matters. If you have to take care of something and you're having to be away from your computer for a second, we are not judging if your camera's on and we see you pop up and leave. That is quite okay. But just be mindful that we're building community. And so let's build together and let's try to come on camera and be connected here in the space if we can. Yes, I saw in the chat, could we clarify the question? The question is, what is it that you need that we can all agree to in order to be present here in this space together today to make it the most effective experience for us? So what does it need that, what agreements can we make as the rules of engagement for our relationship together over the next 2 weeks? Brandon put in the chat one mic. So one person's talking, please give that other person the mic so that way they can share. And I'll be able to, I think I can type on here too. I think you guys can see this. Can you all see that? I think it says one mic. Yeah, sharing pronouns if you use them and feel comfortable using them. Don't judge, be curious. Yes. Values, respect everyone's opinion. Yes, exactly. Being open to listen. Yes. And feel free if you want to, if you can't type in the chat, feel free to come off mute and you can share. And you can share that with us if you have other ideas. Right, if we can support each other and voice ideas, that's great. This is a brave space. That's also a good one. Let's see. Be present. Right, so yes, this is a brave space. All right. So as we move on through the time together today, we'll keep these community agreements in mind. If we are engaging with one another in a way that is not at some point maybe mindful of this or something that comes up that you maybe want to add, you're like, ooh, we're in the middle of the meeting and I just thought about this, feel free to drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat and let us know what we can continue to add as we're engaging together. So that way we can be present, that way we can honor each other in this space together. All right, well, we are good to go. And again, if you have anything else, feel free to add, but I will pass it on to my co-hosts to introduce yourself and then also to share what we have going on next.
All right, everybody. So my name is Rachel Prestopino, and I am Catalyst Miami's Vice President of Policy and Community Engagement. I use she, her pronouns. And I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming our featured speaker for tonight, Ms. Maya Brown, and that's her information there on the slide, and you're going to hear from her in just a second. But Maya is an extremely accomplished political consultant. She's been working to elect progressive candidates up and down the ballot and on issue-based campaigns for the last 10 years in Florida. And her services run the gamut. She's an amazing fundraiser. She's an amazing speaker, communications, all of it. She is an expert, and it has gotten some really incredible folks elected in Miami-Dade County as well, like Representative Ashley Gant, and throughout the state. She hails from Tampa. Right now, she's done legislative work in Florida's capital. She was named by Florida Politics Influence magazine back in 2020. She was on their 30 under 30 list. Last year, she was on their top 150 most influential people to watch in Florida politics. She's incredible, and I'm so excited for you all to hear from her. So let's give a virtual round of applause as I turn it over to Maya.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Put a thumbs up. Y'all can hear and see me good? Okay, awesome. Well, I am so excited to be here with you all virtually. I told Rachel I'd drive down 4 hours to come be with you guys in person, but we can do that next time for the next one. Rachel, thank you so much for having me and for the entire Catalyst team. I really appreciate it. And I am so in awe of the work that you all are doing, especially bringing access to this type of information directly to the community. And so I'm excited to share with you for a few brief moments on my experience being in the political space and what it means for you all to get engaged. You know, when I was thinking particularly in preparing for this conversation, I thought a lot about why folks would be interested in running for office. And so I would love to hear from you all just quickly before we jump back into the program, who is kind of fed up or is concerned about the way that politics is going right now in the state, in the country, locally, and wants to do something about it. Okay, lots of hands raised, fed up with being fed up. Amen. I totally hear that. Hear. Yes, folks. Listen, guys, and the way we do that is we have to show up and do the thing, right? And so those nice little words on that logo that I paid someone a lot of money for came because I wanted to do something about the political process in our country. I wanted to make sure I was in the, you know, what Hamilton says, being in the room where it happens. I wanted to do that. I wanted to make sure that I was supporting folks who shared my values that was put in the chat earlier, and that we were electing folks who made sure that they carried our voices with us. So I won't kind of regurgitate what Rachel said, but I have been doing this work for the last 10 years and really kind of operate my firm in 3 buckets. One is electoral work. So we work on campaigns, ballot initiatives, and also for candidates for public office. And also we are a lobbying firm. So the work that we've done in Tallahassee and also with local governments, we've helped move advocacy work and legislation work forward. So we were a part of the fight on redistricting. We really take on clients and issues that we care about deeply because we really want to be able to move the needle. And the third piece is public affairs. So we work with organizations, nonprofits, businesses who are trying to build community support or work on messaging and narrative and storytelling work, either through earned media or digital media, to really try to change the course of how folks are interacting with their communities. So that is the work we are doing. I apologize to my group of Eunice, Alex, and Caesar. They're probably going to hear this again from our breakout group, excuse me. But this idea, I started my firm 4 years ago because I believe not only did we need more folks in elected office who look like the people on this call and in these pretty boxes, like Destiny said, but we also needed folks who were operatives and political consultants as well, who were able to effectively and in an authentic way communicate with voters, so we could talk about the issues that everybody on this call is fed up about, and because nobody's doing anything. And so I am just really, really excited to be here. And Rachel, I think we can go to the next slide to talk about what qualifies someone to run for office. So I'm curious, what do you think it takes to be qualified to be a candidate for public office? Please drop it in the chat or come off mute. What do you think are the qualifications that someone should have to be in public office? That's right, Erica, being a human. Yep. Be the right age and be a citizen, residency. Okay. Curious, willing to serve the community. Warm. Patrick, I might screenshot that answer and keep it forever. Being a people person. Okay. Okay, Andrea, over 18. Someone who's a servant. Yeah. Yeah. No, keep them coming in the chat for sure. Willing to fight the challenge of standing up for the people you represent, everything that comes with it. These are good answers. And Charlene, I really like that. Whoever wants the smoke, that as a hip hop head, that makes me happy. A neutral listener. Okay, Rachel, let's skip to the next slide and see what qualifies someone to run for office. Oh, never mind. I thought there was another slide. Let's go back. So basically, when it comes to being qualified to run for office, it's all the things that you all said in the chat, and also nothing. A lot of people believe that when you show up as a candidate or even thinking about running for office, there's this long litany that you have to have achieved that is only for a sector of folks based on their background, their experiences, education, etc., that only qualifies this particular subsect of people that they are ready to run for office and they are the most qualified to run for office, and that's not true. I mentioned a little bit earlier about representative government, and that starts with everyone's individual experiences that colors and provides context into how we show up, how our policies and our values show up, and intersecting that with policy making. And so I think that's everything that, again, that y'all said in the chat. Of course, there's some legal requirements that we'll talk about here in a bit. But I think that this willingness to serve and understanding that it's not called public servant for no reason, guys, right? This concept that you are there to serve either a specific district, a specific city, state, country, etc. And that's what it takes, I believe, is just having that heart to serve for sure. But other than that, some specific things that were put in the chat, depending on where it is you're considering running for office, there may be some age requirements. There will also be some residency requirements, making sure that you live in the district or the city, municipality, etc. Those would be something to take a look at to make sure that you're not filing to run for office in Miramar, but you live in Miami Beach, right? that's not how being an elected office works, because hopefully you live in the community that you are planning to serve. And then also, there's a handbook on the Division of Elections website that you can take a look at. Sometimes there are filing fees to make sure that you are actually on the ballot, and there's a qualification period. But if you are interested in running, firms like mine can help you walk through that process of what does it take to make sure that you file, you are qualified, and then you are on the ballot to run a campaign. And so some of those things, again, deadlines, paying those fees, or you could also be qualified as a candidate by the petition process. So some of those pieces are very, very specific. And again, working with a strategist or some folks who've been in the political process can help you figure out what the best strategy is to move forward. But again, qualifications, you don't have to have a Harvard degree. You don't have to, have some of these super uppity qualifications to run for office. It's the experiences that you have and the commitment to service and making a change for your community would be my only two in terms of making sure that you all are running for office. Okay, cool. Next slide. Okay, what are my options? So You know, there's a bajillion cities in Florida. I think there's over 400 municipalities in the state of Florida. And Miami-Dade specifically, the county has 34 and 6 entitlement cities. And so really, guys, what I want you to think about in terms of what your options are the issues that you care about. So like if you had one issue to pick in terms of what you really care about that you wanted to fix or advocate for as an elected official, what would that be? Drop it in the chat real quick. I'll give y'all 60 seconds. Or blurt it out loud, actually. I'm going to start calling on people. Alex, Rachel.
Utility regulation.
Okay, utilities. I heard another voice. What else do we care about?
Accurate tax records.
There we go.
E-
Awesome.
edu-
Education. All right, good deal. This is important, guys, and it goes back to where we started off this whole entire training series in terms of what is your why? What do you want to actually make a change for in your community? And that also informs what particular office you want to run for, right? Let me tell you something. You know, a lot of folks, you know, there's one in the chat that talks about healthcare access, and that is mostly a federal or state issue. You know, being able to kind of change the tide in terms of healthcare access on the city council or the county commission could be quite difficult. And that just, again, you know, I like to encourage folks to take a look at the top 3 things you care about and kind of match that up to what level of government you're able to actually move the needle on that for. If you want to fix potholes and make sure that we have an equitable zoning process, you should not run for Congress, right? Because that's not something you'll be able to do as a congressperson or in the US Senate. But that's something that definitely happens more on the local level, right? If you want to work on the state's constitution, again, you should not run for city commission because you will not have the legislative authority to change that. So just being mindful, guys, and some homework I will give you all is, I know that there's so much here in the chat that you all put in terms of the issues that you care about. And I would love for you to pick your top 3 issues and figure out what level of government that you can actually make changes for that for. And then maybe Rachel, on the next one, folks can come back and share kind of, look, I did my homework, I did some research. This is what I want to be able to do to fix law enforcement misconduct in healthcare and et cetera. And this is the level of government that I should be thinking about. Cool. So we're going to start with the local level. So we talked about the municipalities. Yep. And so there's different types of systems in terms of how municipalities are run. So there's can be a strong mayor city. It can be a weak mayor or a city manager system. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. So the city of Tampa has a strong mayor system. So what that means is our mayor is a separate elected official, who's on the ballot. And she not only runs the day-to-day operations of the city, she also has a lot of executive discretion in terms of making decisions, appointments, managing the budget. And then she works then to go to the city council and get that approved. And so they also, with the budget, have line item veto authority, very similar to the gubernatorial position or relationship with the Florida legislature. And they also oversee the city's laws and ordinances, They are not a member of city council. As I mentioned, this is a separate elected position. So the weak mayor typically is of someone who is appointed or elected by the city council or city commission internally. So if it's 7 commissioners on the board, it's generally a rotating title that one of the 7 it serves as that mayor for that time. It is not like I said, a separate position, or sometimes if it is, they have to work kind of in tandem, hand in hand with the legislative body, typically the city council, to get things done. And they don't have any veto power. And then typically sometimes when there is that decentralized city council's situation, there's generally a city manager who then takes on the executive management of the day-to-day task of the municipality, like utilities, housing, transportation, etc. So again, these are some typical issues that you have the power to address. Zoning in terms of making sure we have smart growth. What does development look like? Some folks would say one of our values are to hold developers accountable in land use, right? And environmental preservation and restoration that Maria put in the chat. All of those things on a local level, we have the ability to fix as legislators or as mayors. Typically what I've seen, guys, in terms of running for the local level, depending on the city, because of course the population is different across those 400 cities in the state of Florida. One, if it's a super small city, I've seen folks run and win on $20,000, but you know, the city of Miami, that mayoral race was millions. And so it really kind of runs the gamut in terms of how much you would need to win. And one question I'll answer really quickly before we skip is, Maya, I get asked this all the time, Maya, why do you need to raise money to run for office? And you need to pay for things. And I know that Destiny and Rachel are going to talk about this in future sessions about what it means to fundraise, etc. But just for your context, in terms of the funds you need to run, you raise that money to be able to get your message out. So that's our municipal office plan. So Rachel, next slide. Miami-Dade County, the largest county in the state of Florida. Right now, we have a separate elected mayor who is Daniela Levine Cava. We have county commission, school board, and only until recently, we now have the ability to elect the sheriff, tax collector, and clerk of courts. Before, I believe that was also an appointed position. And the county commission for Miami-Dade is massive. I can't remember off the top of my head how many folks are on that commission, but it's a lot. It is a lot in terms of the number of folks, and it's a very big budget. And think about the county commission not only working in tandem with your cities, because there's 34, but they basically take on the role of cities in unincorporated Miami-Dade County. So when there is not a formal city or that one of those 6 entitlement cities, the county then acts as the de facto city for unincorporated Miami-Dade. Yes, 13 county commission districts. Thank you, Rose. And now, again, you'll be able to weigh in on who the sheriff, tax collector, and clerk of courts will be. Again, you know, I think the last race that I paid attention to in terms of the Miami-Dade County Commission was in 2022. And there they spent $500,000, $500,000. And again, that's to get your message out. And it's because it's more people, right? And so it's the number of people in one of those 13 county commission districts and who is registered to vote. And of course, you want to be able to tell your story on why you're the best candidate to be their elected official. Okay. Okay, Tallahassee. Yeah, every time I hear the name of that city, I get a little bit of PTSD, guys. So keep me in your thoughts and prayers. But the state legislature and the state government is huge. As you all know, Florida is not only massive in terms of its geography, but also in terms of the amount that it oversees. So state government is made up, of course, you know, of the executive branch, legislative, and judicial. And so our executive branch is run by our governor, and our lieutenant governor is appointed by the governor. It is a joint ticket. So when the governor, the gubernatorial candidate, is running, they choose someone to be their running mate. In other states, those are 2 separately elected positions, but in the state of Florida, they are joint. And the theory would be, if something happened to the governor, the lieutenant governor would then move and step into that position. The legislature is comprised of the Florida House and the Florida Senate. The Florida Senate has 40 districts. The Florida House has 120 districts. So in total, there's 160 legislators in the state of Florida. And then, of course, our judicial system, which is heralded by our state Supreme Court, which our governor has the authority to appoint and remove folks from the judicial bench for the Supreme Court of the state of Florida. So our governor certainly has a lot of power in the state. And so many things that the Florida legislature has the authority to to address. So redistricting, as you all probably heard, every 10 years we go through the census process where we are then told and have the information about how many folks are living in certain districts in the state. And then we're supposed to use that to draw fair districts. We have something in the state of Florida called the Fair Districts Amendment in our Constitution. And so we're supposed to use that to make sure that the districts that are put together for our state house and state senate are representative, that it is equitable. And there's a ton of other things in that amendment, but that's one of the things they have the power to address. One fun fact that I love to tell about the state government, especially the Florida legislature, they really, every time they convene for session every year, only have one job. And I'm wondering if you all know what that is. It's technically, they don't have to pass any laws. They only are required to pass a balanced state budget. That's in our Constitution. That is their job. The governor's role in that, the governor certainly has veto authority when it comes to passing our state budget, and as well as appointing the heads of, that's right, Enrique, the budget, as well as appointing the heads of different state agencies. So the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of the Department of Children and Families, all of that comes from the authority and the appointment of the governor. The Florida is an expensive state. So folks will tell you it will take $20 million to run statewide if you are looking to run for a gubernatorial campaign, if you're looking to run for attorney general. What else is in the cabinet? The CFO of Florida, and then also the ag commissioner. Those are the 4 statewide elected positions. Of course, Florida House and Senate districts are also getting more expensive. And just a nugget, people ask why are things getting more expensive? So the cost of TV placements are going up, radio placements, et cetera. The cost of mail and postage also impacts how much you need to run. And there are so many other things in terms of state government that are important, and that we also need you all to do. And another piece that I think folks don't think about in this particular concept of state government is our judicial system. So in terms of our prosecutors, you all probably saw the news today that there was a prosecutor removed by the governor. We have 20 judicial circuits, in the state of Florida, where we have a public defender and a state attorney, which folks in other states would probably refer to as a district attorney. And then we have the judicial bench, where the circuit bench takes on criminal cases, and then the county benches work on civil cases for the most part. And so also we need lawyers to run for those positions as well. You can get appointed to a judicial seat by the governor, but there are certainly opportunities to run for judge. And there's a ton of rules that comes with being in a judicial candidate in terms of issues you can and cannot talk about. There's different legal requirements and boundaries when it comes to raising money as judicial candidates. But also consider, if you care about prosecutorial discretion and sentencing and criminal justice reform, also think about running for state attorney or for public defender. And there's a ton of other kind of county and constitutional positions as well that are important, like tax collector, like the sheriff's office, also in terms of the county and clerk of courts, the folks who run the court system in those specific judicial circuits and in those counties. So there's so many things, again, guys, when you go back and do your homework in terms of the issues you care about, I'm sure that there is an elected position that we can think of and help get you there. So Rachel, next slide. And so you may be like me and be like, there is not a way that I will be running for office ever. And that's okay. But you might be here because you are excited about either folks that you know who should be a candidate for public office. And so you want to take this information back to them or that community, or you want to help, like what I do, and help work on these particular campaigns. There are other ways to serve, and you can be appointed to specific positions. So we talked about how the governor appoints different secretaries of department agencies. So that certainly is an appointed position that you do not have to be elected to serve in. And there is a number of community boards that you also can be appointed to. So the noise abatement board, also there is a zoning board, all of these different things for your different municipalities and counties. There's also sometimes a diversity advisory board, a Hispanic advisory board, et cetera, where you all can show up, provide your feedback. And a lot of times these advisory boards are able to create on record specific plans and feedback and liaise with the community, with those elected officials to say, this is where our community is and the current needs, and this is where we believe the budget or some specific policy should be made to address these particular things. And again, they also have different appointment positions where you can be appointed as the city manager, right? We talked about that, or the city attorney, to be able to address some of these other opportunities to serve. So I just threw a ton of information at you. So certainly I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions about running for office, and particularly the opportunities to serve or run for office. So pause there, come off mute or raise your hand or drop it in the chat. And I'd love to have an open dialogue about what we just discussed. Thanks for that question, Sierra. I will take this. Are there restrictions to run for office if you are a state employee? Generally, yes, but it also depends on what your specific agency that you're working for, what their policy is. Sometimes there's an internal resign to run law, depending on who the agency lead is, if that internal policy is there. And then also, if you are a state employee in an elected position like the state prosecutor, et cetera, you do have to resign to run for office. It's a great question. Thank you. And Rose just shot out some free game. If you all are interested in being appointed to a specific council, please connect with her. Rose, if you can drop your information in the chat as well. Too many times those openings stay vacant for way too long. So generally you can reach out to the counties or the city's community engagement departments or their marketing departments to get on their email list, or be advised when those vacancies come open, because a lot of times those appointments come with specific terms, right? So you serve for 4 years, 6 years, 2 years, et cetera. And then you go through the process of applying. That specific legislative body or the mayor approves or disapproves your application, and then you get appointed. So I'll pause there. Yes, ma'am, Rose. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm just getting like a lot of direct messages. So I figured it might be easier just to kind of share really briefly, like what the process is like. So I'm on a county advisory board. I've been on one for 6 years now. I just keep getting reappointed by the incoming commissioner for that district. And I also serve on local, like town advisory boards. So I have appointments in both county and local town advisory boards. And what I would recommend you do, and it's really simple, and I try to encourage everyone to do it, is figure out what district you live in. And as soon as you do that, just email the office of your county commissioner, send them a quick bio, let them know, are there any openings? There are tons of advisory boards. And you can just reach out and say, I'd love to serve my community. I'd love an appointment, share with them your background. And I know I regularly talk and engage with several of our county commissioners, and they're always asking me to recruit people that live in their district. So there is definitely potential to be appointed, even if you just want to kind of get your feet wet a little bit before you run for election. If you want to serve your community in a different capacity, I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much, Rose. And one of the things we talked about earlier about figuring out what issues you care about is also pertinent to if you want to be appointed to something, right? Like, don't sign up to be on a noise abatement board if you don't want to do that, right? Like, make sure that you have that passion and that inspiration of your why in terms of the boards that you are interested in serving on. So also want to shout out, because some folks lifted that up in the chat, is also a constitutional position in the state of Florida as property appraiser. So folks could, if you're interested in those issues, you could run for that. And also supervisors of elections is an elected position in the state where they are tasked with making sure that we have fair and integral elections. So Alex asked a question is, what's the best way for someone to know the rules or restrictions for canvassing and campaigning in your community? That is a great, great question. The first resource I would tell you to go to is your supervisor of elections office in Miami-Dade County. Here's where things get hasty, because sometimes there's some counties where their elections offices are run by the specific municipality. So if you're interested in a city election or a countywide election, either go to your supervisor elections office or go to the city's office and ask to speak with their elections department. And they will provide you all of the information. What's important about that is that, with HOAs and condos, et cetera, there will be some strict no soliciting signs or rules or policies. And so it's going to be imperative for you to know that, so that you don't get fined or have any issues with making sure that you're getting your word out in terms of door-to-door placement. So yes, and one of the things I'd like to say, Alex, in addition to that is, it could be a cost savings for sure to do canvassing, but canvassing and raising money are not the antithesis of each other. They work to go hand in hand because those pretty little flyers that you get when someone walks past your door, all of that costs money. And there are so many rules in terms of electoral regulations, in terms of what you have to abide by with fundraising and paying for things. And all of that information will also be available from your supervisor of elections office that you will generally get once you file as a candidate for public office. Okay. There was another question here that says, is it necessary to use a political strategy agency? I will tell you guys a funny story and then answer the question. So I remember there was a candidate for public office last cycle who called me, and we had a very long conversation about her campaign, how much she's raised, and how her strategy, had been going to date, because she called me right after the primary and she was like, Maya, I really want to hire you. I think you can take me all the way. And I told her hiring me is the worst decision that she could have made for her particular campaign at that time. And, I laugh because I usually talk myself out of a lot of money by giving folks that answer, but I'm honest because it is so important to take a look at your campaign and what it is that you want to accomplish and how much you need. And hopefully you will find a consultant who is as transparent as me and tells you, look, guys, this isn't necessary. This is what you need to do. Here's how I can help. And then you kind of say, que sera, sera, and move on. But it's not necessary to do it. I would say that if you have some mentors who have either run for public office or who have worked on campaigns, those would be a great first place to start to have those conversations and ask those questions about how to do it, how to take the information you learned in this training and apply it to your potential run. And then of course, reach out to different consultants, and they might be able to help you. And then just use your discretion and discernment in terms of how you move forward. Okay, awesome. And so any other questions before we jump to our break? Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick pause for the cause right quick and do a break. And we will be right back, and I'll turn it back over to the Catalyst Miami team to tell us where we go from here.
Thank you so much, Maya. That was absolutely amazing. I learned so much, so I'm really excited about this. But yeah, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. That would get us back at 7:13, I think. Yep, 7:13. So we'll be back here at 7:13, and we'll get started from there. See you all back in 5 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. It is now 7:13. Feel free to come back to your cameras, back to your computers. So if you need some water, grab your water, grab your snack, and make it back to the computer with us so we can get started. So I'm going to pass it back over to Maya. Now that we've had our break, we've learned a little bit about the options that we have. And now the question is, am I ready to run? Me? Am I ready? Maya, could you tell us a little bit more?
Absolutely. I hope you guys stretched. We've been throwing a lot of content at you and that y'all are taking notes. And again, y'all have homework, so I'm gonna check and make sure you guys know what that is. But before we move on though, I want everybody, if you're not on your phone, to take your phones out and make sure that you all type in on your favorite social media apps, whether that's Facebook or Instagram, the clock app with TikTokies, Twitter, and I want you to follow me on these social media apps. And the reason is why is I also want you all to reach out and stay in touch with me in terms of your questions and how you're thinking about public office. And so that handle is at MSMAYABROWN. So I will drop it in the chat as well, but make sure you guys do that, run those follows up. Thank you, Rachel. Run those follows up for sure, because I want to stay in touch as you all are thinking about this. And so the question is, are you all ready to run for office? Destiny, you asked me, I think you are ready. So you call me, girl, when you're ready to go down there to the elections office and get ready to start that campaign for sure. So are we ready to run? Rachel, let's hit it. The next slide. So steps to prepare. So we talked a little bit about earlier, what are the qualifications of being a candidate for public office? There are none in terms of what we established besides some of those legal parameters, but it's always good in terms of making sure that you are prepared. One of the things we do here at MB Strategies is also walk through this process with folks getting prepared to run for office. And that, basically provides the groundwork in terms of your community involvement and starting that public service early. Let me tell you something. Folks want to know if you've already served your community in a real way and how have you done it? Have you been involved or appointed to those boards that we talked about earlier? Are you a part of a sorority or a fraternity? Are you a part of your local NAACP chapter? Are you a part of your bar association? How have you already given up of your time, energy, and talent to make sure you are qualified or actually will have a servant's heart when you are as a candidate for public office? So the way you do that is by establishing your community involvements and name ID. So any opportunity you have to serve, think about doing it, right? Those different organizations, groups, there's an advocacy organization. If there is a rally on Tally, if you have the opportunity to do so and the means to do so, go up to Tallahassee, advocate for the issues that you care about. Make sure you go down to your city council meetings, your county commission meetings. Make sure that you are speaking out on issues because all of that can provide that increased name ID and community involvement. And name ID, folks, is basically just this concepts that people know who you are. When they hear your name, they're like, this is so-and-so, either they are a candidate for office or they are elected. And you just want folks to begin to remember who you are and the work and the brand that you've put together in the community. I'm with Taylor. Let's do a catalyst to the Capitol. Make sure y'all come up Alligator Alley though, and come pick me up on the way. So I would love to see this for sure. Okay, so some other things. We talked about going down to your county commission meetings and watching, and also testifying for the state legislature. But another thing you guys should do is watch these meetings, right? So another piece of the homework I'm going to give to you guys is once you figure out what level of government the issues that you care about align with, watch one of those meetings and see what they're talking about, kind of the Robert's Rules of Order. Say that 3 times fast, to see kind of how the agenda is organized and what it is they're able to accomplish in these commission meetings. Some people meet once a week. Sometimes the legislature, especially when they're in session, they meet every day and they have different committees. And there is so much you can learn just by watching, turning on the Florida channel or the local C-SPAN network for the federal government or your local city and county commission. Review your personal finances. I will not sugarcoat that it is difficult, especially running for office, because it does have a financial impact on you and especially your family. It takes away time from work. You have to make sure not only if you're a state employee, but if your employer allows you to be an elected official run for office at the same time. And if the answer is no, what does that mean? Do you push off running for office, or do you quit your job and decide to run and hopefully find another job? All of those things are super, super important, because again, not only is it a fundraising mechanism that you have to do for your campaign, it's also going to impact your personal finances as well. And I repeat, do not go in debt running for office. Okay. I've seen it happen way too many times. Like, we know this is important and this work is important, but please make sure to take care of yourself. Running for public office or being in public service is not self-deprecation, right? It is a little bit of a sacrifice, but you should not certainly put yourself out to do it. So make sure that is something that you're considering, and making sure that you're able to stay stable and whole while you are a candidate and also while serving. A big piece to that is consider your family support and obligations. Make sure if you have a family, especially your immediate family, how do they feel about that? Are they okay with now being in the public eye? It is not truthful to say that you can be a candidate or be elected and your family has no impact on that. There's certain expectations, and of course, a certain level of access from the public to your family now that exists by now being a candidate and or an elected official. So make sure that they are okay with that. How does that then change taking your babies to soccer practice or to or showing up to dance recitals and things like that? All of that changes because your schedule now changes as a candidate or an elected official, because you have community events to go to, hopefully showing up at the commission meetings or et cetera, wherever you are planning to serve, and also doing call time to raise that money. So there is a time obligation as well that your family is going to be impacted. And also do a little bit of research on yourself, guys, and your family. Figure out what skeletons you have in the closet. And if you can, tuck those away as much as possible so folks can't find them. That means scour your social media. If you see ridiculous tweets that you put out, or on the X app, whatever it's called now, go back through and delete stuff, guys, because once they get a hold of you being a candidate for public office, they're going to get those screenshots and screen record. So make sure that you really vet yourself in terms of what's out there on the internet, on Beyonce's internet, as I like to call it, and delete those things that are not a good representation of you. And then also do some Googling. Who are you? What comes up when you Google yourself? And make sure that if there's any issues, especially not only just yourself, but your family, unfortunately, politics can be a dirty game, and your family is up for grabs in terms of sometimes with these campaigns that get dirty. So is there any issue with your partner's personal history or their past life or your children, etc., especially something that can be found out? So do that opposition research on you, your family, folks that you are in business with, right? All of these folks where you have relationships. This is super, super important as you're entering the public eye. Start building your Rolodex. I don't know if some folks on this call remember the physical Rolodex that we used to have back in the day, but your Rolodex is the contacts in your phone, right? The folks on your Facebook page, on your LinkedIn page, etc. All of these people who have some relationship with you. These are going to be your A1s, day ones. And this may be people that you haven't talked to in years, right? The people you played softball with in high school, or if you were on the debate team with them in college. Think about all those people whom you may not even have their direct phone number, but start adding those names to the list to begin doing some not evaluation, but making sure that you are regenerating those relationships too. And look, guys, we are going into an election cycle. There's some 2023 races happening in Miami already and in South Florida. So there's a ton of ways for you to get involved. I have a funny story where I was an intern many years ago, and my roommate at the time in Tallahassee, we were so excited to get involved in politics. Now, almost 10 years later, She is a lawyer and she has nothing to do with politics once she got her first kind of foray into it. So please make sure you get involved in a campaign to see what it looks like, whether that be knocking on doors, helping to host fundraisers, helping to enter data into the database. There are so many ways that you can be helpful and supportive to make sure that you know this is what you're signing up for. Because I think a lot of people have a West Wing or a Scandal or the Office understanding of what politics is. And until you are able to see it on the grassroots ground level floor, that way you'll be able to see, this is what I would do, this is what I wouldn't do, or if I want to even do this in this capacity at all. So many ways you can get involved, and that can be either with a ballot initiative campaign. There's a couple that are going through the process of being put on the 2024 statewide ballot, which are abortion and recreational marijuana. Of course, like I mentioned, they are candidate-based campaigns. And we are also, guys, going into legislative season. So we're going to start committee weeks. So there's also a way to get involved with your local organizations in that way. Pay attention to what specific bills are coming up. If there's specific legislation on the local level that you want to be following, you can help build the advocacy strategy around that to help organize and mobilize your community or district, either in support of a specific piece of legislation or in opposition to it. So we are, I would certainly encourage you guys to reach out to your, take a look at who's on your ballot, who's already filed, connect with the folks in this chat. You may live in the same community, and really Elias is running for Hialeah City Council. So look, there you go. There's your first opportunity to volunteer in a campaign right there. And also certainly, not least, is connect with organizations that support first-time candidates. If you take out your computer and Google, I want to run for office or first-time candidate, so many organizations are going to pop up. There are some in the state that are doing fantastic work, like Ruthless. If you are interested, of course, in running for a partisan position, there are the local parties as well, like the DEC or the RECs that you can go to in your county or in your local community. And there's also some based on race or other types of ways that you show up in the world, pro-LGBTQ organizations, veterans organizations, Hispanic, Black, etc. And they are able and they have the mechanisms to not only do trainings like this, but also walk you through the process of filing for office, setting up your campaign as a candidate, or even understanding how to move forward in the political process as an operative. So we are also really excited in terms of, Catalyst Miami providing this first opportunity to get you introduced into the concept of running for office. Again, please make sure that you share this information far and wide. And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the process and the information relative to electoral campaigns. But make sure, guys, as we come to the end of my session, that we are able to, that you know what your homework is and that you're connected with me, because again, I'd love to stay in touch and hear about the issues that you care about, where you're thinking about running, and if I can be helpful. So I think right now we are going to turn to a short video, but again, just want to say thank you to Rachel and Destiny and to the entire Catalyst team. And I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and just pause right there and see if there are any questions from folks in the chat before we move over. Yes, I am on Facebook. Same name, Maya like the poet, Brown like the color. So add me on Facebook too. I'm on Facebook because my mom wants to see my pictures. So that's about it. All right. Any questions about anything we talked about today? Qualifications for running, what it means to be in public office. If you want to hear funny stories, I tell really bad jokes, also can do that too. Okay, well, good deal. Well, thank you guys so much. Again, I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of your names on my ballot. Again, that little QR code in the corner, I'll stay on for a little bit longer. You can get all of my information and would love to be in touch with you about running for office, being an operative, being a consultant, being a lobbyist, etc. So I am so grateful for you all for showing up, taking time out of your Wednesday evening to even consider this, especially in the hellfire that is Florida. I said that in my own capacity. And so thank you all so much for doing this. That just shows how much you are committed to yourselves and your communities. And I can't wait again to see you guys on our ballots. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Maya. Can everybody please give a virtual round of applause for Maya and all of her wisdom and expertise and humor and grace. And if I can also take a point of personal privilege and say that Maya is a part of a really cool podcast Twitter space too, that am I allowed to shout it out? Florida Black Girls. They have their own Twitter. I think it's just at FL Black Girls, right? So follow them because they're very funny and informative. And that is a no holds barred space. So expect partisan talk, expect the tea, expect everything, but it's super fun. And we'll teach you a lot about like the insider knowledge. So yeah, plug it all. Exactly. Thanks.
Yes, I love it. And Rachel had me on a tight leash on this call. So if you want to hear the unfiltered version, the Florida Black Girls, we're on all the podcasts too. And yeah, lots of tea. Podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts too.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Sorry, that's just where I've caught it. But thank you so much, Maya. Appreciate you. Thank you for the time. And we're definitely going to have you back in person at some point. And we'll get you over here back to South Florida. So.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. So excited. We'll talk soon.
Okay. So we can go ahead and unspotlight her photo. Spotlight me for a second. Okay. So hi, everybody. For the sake of time, we're actually, I think, going to skip through. We had a video that we were going to show you, kind of a TEDx talk from former mayor and city council member in Stockton, California, Michael Tubbs, who's a really interesting case. And this is him so many years ago talking about his experience running for office. And he kind of hits on some of the similar themes of like, he thought he had to do all these things. He thought he had to like go to Oxford and get a PhD and do all this to like serve his community, and then realize like, oh, I just have to like be 18 and get 50% plus one of the votes and I can serve my community. And he talks about his story of losing a loved one to gun violence and just how much his community in Stockton means to him, and some of the ups and downs. And yeah, I think he calls it hills and valleys of running for office. So we're going to just send that video in a follow-up email so you all can watch that, and it can be a little bit inspirational. And I think he was also the youngest city council member in Stockton history. So that can be inspiration for some of the younger folks on the call as well. So we'll send that along. For now, though, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and we're going to move into an activity before we come back together to close out. There's a little delay. There we go. Getting in touch with your why. So we will share the Michael Tubbs story. And for now, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip some solo journal time as well, because I get the feeling from a lot of you on the call that you've actually been thinking about this for a little bit, and you're probably ready to share some of these thoughts. So we're going to move into some breakout groups for about 10 or 15 minutes and just discuss some of these questions. We'll put them in the chat. The questions are, what do you love about your community? What sort of changes do you want to see? What calls you to the civic process? What motivates you? What ticks you off? What impact do you want to make? And which elected office is best suited for you? So this is a little beginnings of some of the homework that Maya assigned to you, where she wanted you to think about like those top 3 issues that you want to have an impact on, and then align that with like which elected office actually is best suited to address those issues. So this is a jump start on Maya's homework, really. And also just grounding yourself in like why, what are the issues that really matter to me? Why would I want to run? And then that can help you to think about which elected office is best suited for you. So we're going to go back into breakout rooms and have these discussions for, just get it started about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we'll come back together and go through some next steps for next week's session and close out. So here we go. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for taking the time to have these conversations. Let's just take 1 or 2 minutes to, if anybody has anything off the top that they want to share, drop some of your thoughts in the chat. Maybe we can have 1 or 2 people come off mute and share something interesting that was discussed in your group.
Well, hi, my name is Keisha, and I was telling our group that one of the reasons what made me get into the civil duty process is because I want to be the change that I want to see, and I also believe in life is like a domino effect, that if it's happening to me, it's happening to someone else, and that even if I don't get to see the process being done, at least I can say I paid it forward for someone else to have a better life.
That's awesome. Thank you, Keisha. Monique, you want to share?
Yeah, hi. I'm interested in running for property appraiser, but when I was sharing my views to the group, I think I was a bit esoteric. And the property appraiser is pretty much a dry subject. I like it because that's my field, real estate and construction. But I'm just wondering it might be a challenge to get other people more interested in reason why to vote for someone new rather than the status quo. So I've got some work ahead to figure that out.
Yeah, well, real estate and construction is directly relevant to our struggle in Miami-Dade County with affordable housing. It's obviously at crisis level proportions here. And so I think if you can find ways to connect your passions and your expertise to that very pressing issue and real people's stories about struggling to afford to live here, then that would be amazing. And it's great that you had that experience to bring to the table. So thank you for sharing that. Loving seeing some things in the chat here about working together with other people, building community over divisions, passion for continued connectivity, equality, equity, transparency. There was a lot of conversation in my group about corruption and some of the political corruption that we've seen in our communities, and how we want to usher in a new kind of leadership focused on transparency and honesty over corruption. So that was awesome. All right, so now I'm going to pass it off to Destiny to take us through some next steps, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here while she does that.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. So I enjoyed hearing what everyone got to share, which is great. And so we are going to be back here next week on Wednesday at 6 p.m. And so I'm really, really excited to join with you all again, but also with some really great speakers. So next week, we're going to be having a couple of speakers join us. We're going to be having a panel discussion with Jill Tracy, who's the director of the morning show and morning show co-host for Hot 105 FM. And we're also going to have some Representative Ashley Gantz. We're going to have North Miami City Councilwoman Cassandra Timothy. We're going to have former County Commissioner Jean Monestein, and then we're going to also have the Miami Shores Councilwoman and former Mayor Sandra Harris, some of whom on this list are actually some of our alumni. So they were in your shoes as well for most of you all. And so that's what's going to be happening next week. But before we get there, you have to fill out the session feedback. I'm going to drop the link. We want to know a little bit more about what you thought about this session, how we can improve for next time. What are we going to be doing to just improve, to make sure that you all are having a great experience and that you're getting out of these sessions what it is that you need to run for office and make the best decision for you. So that's the session feedback. So I just dropped that link when you all have some time. Fill it out now if you can over the next couple of minutes that we have. And then lastly, next steps are homework. So we are going to have some homework. We kind of already gave some primers for this, and earlier in the session, we're going to have you read the Gann's article on Story of Self, Story of Us, Story of Now. If you've been connected with Catalyst Miami at any point in time, you will know a little bit about the Story of Self, Us, and Now, and the public narrative. This reading is just to kind of get you some understanding about what it is that you need to craft a really good story. So that's what that article is about. And then from there, you're going to write down a 2-minute story on what caused you to take leadership and run for office. So there's some things that you have already talked about today that can go in your story that you can write down in a more formalized way. And there's also some other things to consider here. You can talk about your story and some moments that have led you to want to run for office, your connection to the community. I heard some of that conversation happening as well. What are you passionate about? What values do you have that call you to take action? And why do you care specifically about running? And why are you running now? Why is now the time, right? And so here's some things that you can consider to add to your story, as well as what this Gann's article will give you more information about. But for homework, you're just going to be writing down a 2-minute story on what caused you to take leadership and run for office. And we'll discuss that a little bit more next time. But without further ado, I think that is all I have for next steps. But as you go into the session feedback link, it is really, really important for you to be able to fill that out, because that's how you're also going to submit questions. The article is actually going to be in a follow-up email, and it's also going to be, I can drop it here as well. It's follow-up email, and there's also, it's also linked in the homework instructions as well. So you'll get access to that too. But yes, so as you go into the session feedback, if you have some time for the next 4 minutes, we'd love for you to click on that link, fill it out. So that way you can write some questions for our panelists for next week. So if you have questions, you want to know what their experience was like, and you have anything specific you want to ask each of the panelists, you can write those questions inside of the session feedback link. Rachel, do you want to put up the panelists again, just in case, so that way folks can see who it is they're asking and who it is they're going to be speaking to next time?
Yes, I will. And yes, that is one really good reason to fill out that that sheet, because while it gives us feedback for the session, which is super important, it's also it will help us prepare for next week, so we know what you want to hear from folks. We have some questions prepared, of course, and we've got a great moderator, but we want to make sure the questions that are being asked are the things you need to know. So there you go. These are your speakers.
Yep. And so once you all are done with that, once you're done with the session feedback, feel free to hop off, say thank you in the chat, say good night. But I see some of that happening already. So feel free to check that out, the session feedback. And then when you're done, we are done for the evening. So thank you all so much for attending tonight. And we can't wait to see you again next Wednesday, same time, same place.
Thank y'all. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can
Thank
follow us
you.
on social.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, everybody.